And we are live tonight with the one and only Weird Western author, J.R. White. Mr. White, how are you doing today?
Mr. White,
good. It's a beautiful day down here in Florida. I know, right? It makes me feel old.
No, I think he's just scared of you.
And I have to say that we've already set a record. We had 18 people at the start of the show.
Holy
That's
shit.
an all-time record for live.
Yeah, you're bringing it, man. We're gonna have JR on all the time.
Well,
yeah,
I may have reached out and got a hold of some people and told them, hey, I want this to be the highest viewership that these guys have got. Let's make an impression. So I'm glad to see my people delivering.
So bald and spiky.
To all his people who are delivering now, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. You can represent every week, or twice a week, or whatever it is that we do.
Oh, so JR, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I just won a jiu-jitsu tournament back on Saturday. My crew did really well. I have guys doing the final read-throughs for me for the second draft of the third Kit Barker novel. A little later tonight, I'll reveal the title of that third novel in the series. It's also going to give away some audiobooks in the comment section. I'm just going to kind of select people at random as I go. So if you say something I think is cool, I might ask you to email me and set you up with some audiobooks.
Thought you were going to give away bourbon or something there.
Oh, yeah, because of the gesture? Yeah. Nope, this is mine.
Yeah. Damn.
So what brand is it? Since this is, technically a book and a beverage, what are we drinking tonight?
I'm drinking a Compass Box Spice Tree.
Okay.
So it's a blended scotch, which I've only had a couple sips, I swear.
Sure.
Hey, Daniel, what the hell, man? You've been here like 3 minutes and you're going to start bragging on us already? Jesus.
I happen to know what that guy's haircut looks like, so
okay. All right.
So Tim McKay is my favorite Canadian. I'll say that now and get in trouble.
Until another one comes on. But you got someone from Maine already, so they're damn near Canadian. They're actually the guy from Maine probably lives further north than 90% of the Canadians.
That could be. When I last time I drove up there, I went across Lake Champlain and my phone switched over to international and tried to charge me out the wazoo.
Where were you?
I went up to Jay Peak, Vermont.
Right on.
This was back before the plague years.
Right. I'm from Vermont, is why I asked. And I knew you said Lake Champlain.
Oh, okay.
So my brother's house, actually, when you go to my brother's house, you get that message. Your phone beeps and it says, "Welcome to Canada." Roaming, whatever. That's how close to the border he lives. So
who's this in the comments real quick? E.L. Montague. Do you know them?
E.L. Montague. Yes.
He's a troublemaker. Okay. Is he a trouble? Well, he's a troublemaker that I'm going to send a free audiobook to. Because he says they're sexy, so I like it. I'm going to send him a copy of the novelette, which is The Bounty and the Bones. So
who does your covers? Excuse me, I should be eating.
My covers are done by a young artist named Cammie Sanders. So this is the one she did for Shadow of Wolves.
Yeah.
And she's the one, here's the one she did for Hail of Brimstone.
Nice. Is that does she do computer art or does she freehand that?
I'm not actually sure. My impression is it's a little of each.
Yeah. If you think of it, some point during the next hour, try to write down her website or something, and we'll give her a plug here because those are really lovely covers.
No, thank you. I'll she's not doing that like openly. I kind of got her through back channels, so I don't know. Like she doesn't have a website or anything. What I'll have to do is
she should.
Yeah, she should. I'll do a blog post on authorjrwhite.com on the blog, and the Storyteller at Large blog, and I'll do a post about her there. She's up to taking more folks in.
All right. Before we get to your weird westerns, the elephant in the cage is you, actually. You
Okay.
used to beat people up for fun. Is that correct? Now, I've said on this show many times.
For fun and profit.
Okay, that's even better.
Yeah, for fun and profit.
I have said on this show many times that if you go to a Comic-Con, you will never see a triathlete. But here you be, a certified MMA fighter. How does one get started in the business of beating the hell out of people?
Oh, I was bullied as a child.
Okay.
No, well, I was a little, kid, but it was mostly martial art movies and stuff like that, you know. Like most people, like most young men, I saw like Bruce Lee, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jackie Chan, all that stuff. And I was like, man, that's really cool. I'd love to do that. And so I started taking kind of the martial arts that would sort of get you towards that kind of thing. And then after doing that for many years, I found myself in Minnesota and learned that there was a professional fight team for MMA up the way. And I thought, I'll go in. I know how to fight. I'll tool these guys up a little, make me a star. It'll be great. And that didn't happen at all. They beat the hell out of me. It turns out I didn't actually know how to fight, and that actual fighting is a little bit different from, you know, the really flamboyant, like film grade choreography. But it was really that. It was getting the crap kicked out of me and realizing I thought I knew how to fight and I don't know how to fight. And that's what made me decide I need to know how to fight. I need to know how to handle myself. So went from there.
So now I'm going to do something that probably shouldn't ever be done. And 2 minutes ago, I wouldn't have thought ever would be done. I'm going to draw a parallel between MMA fighting and writing. Because what you've just described in a much less bloody and violent way is what writers or indie authors do all the time. Hey, I just wrote a book. I think it's pretty freaking great. I'm going to put it on Amazon. Oh, that sucks. I need to learn how to do this.
It has its charms. Yeah. I was actually really lucky. I started to get a little bit immune, not entirely immune, like everybody has their soft spots. But one thing that helped me a lot was early on, I was getting good reviews. And then all of a sudden I got this guy who, I don't know if I like kicked his dog in a past life or something. He absolutely hated the book and he hated me, and he attacked like the quality of my education and my background and the horse I rode in on. And it was so flamboyant and over the top that it kind of made me not worry so much about reviews. I was just like, well, if that's what's out there, you know, I don't see the reason to get too bent out of shape about reviews, right? Now, if somebody who loved like the first book and gave it a great review trashes the second one, that hurts, you know, because it's like I betrayed this person's expectation. But luckily, that has not happened. Everybody's been pretty happy, and I've done well in the review game.
You can take EL's audiobook away after this comment.
It was your relationship to his wife.
For the bad review, why he hated you.
Well, I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, a man will get upset about that kind of thing.
So anyway, where did Kit Barker come from?
Who's Kit Barker? Mike, contact maybe.
He is the main character of JR's books. I've read all three. I've actually read all three. Where's Bo when you need him? I read all three books. I didn't DNF him. I didn't give him 1 stars. Of course, Bo's not here to see it. But go on. Kit Barker.
Kit Barker is he's a rough and tumble gunslinger in the Old West who he's got a dark past, but he's trying to be a good man. He's trying to do his best, and he keeps coming across these situations where, you know, something a little outside the box starts to push against him, and he wants to push back, and it just kind of goes from there. He's a little bit of a live wire, Kit Barker. Why gunslinger? Well, because it's the Old West and they shoot people. It's sort of one of the classic Western tropes. Is, you know, most of the heroes in the old Westerns, you know, they have to be able to handle themselves, good with their guns, good with their fists, you know, strict moral code. Barker's moral code, he wishes it was better than it was. He's a little fast and loose with civilization and the rules from time to time, but I think readers like that. I had a reader who told me that Barker satisfies her bloodlust.
Nice.
Ouch. Okay.
But with Westerns, especially, though,
she meant it in the best possible way.
Your guy has to be good at his job in this particular genre, because if he's not, he's gone by the end of the first contact. Right? I mean,
yeah.
You know, you've got to be the best, or you're writing novellas the whole time.
Yeah. Second place in a gunfight's pretty rough.
It's not good. Not good.
So
what got you into writing? Was it were you in the ring one day taking a punch to the throat and you're going, there has got to be a better way to earn a buck?
Now, I have had that experience, but my my love of writing predates that. I've always loved storytelling. You know, when I was a kid, I grew up in kind of like a different environment because of how rural I grew up. I felt like in some ways we were like behind the cultural curve. I once described where I grew up as like living in the 1950s, but without the racism. I didn't have cable TV. I didn't have antenna TV. Like, I watched like Garfield on a black and white TV when I could get the bunny ears to line up properly. You know, so as a result of that, as a result of, in retrospect, the blessing of being sort of away from on-demand, flashy in your face entertainment, I was big into books, and we had a VCR, and you'd get movies. And so like a book or a movie, that more compact, enclosed storytelling, I just always loved that. I loved how you could put something into someone else's head and have them see it and experience it, and, you know, all the stuff that comes with that. And that's just really cool. So that stuck with me. I'm also the third of 5 children, and a kid's got to get attention somehow.
Oh yeah.
And Ro, what are you? Are you the 7th of 7?
7th of 7, you bet.
And here you are, writing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So EL has to let you know, EL, he makes lots of comments, and then Google thinks he's a spam bot, so he gets banned from our show. So, you know, he's in that.
He's made an interesting comment here. Western and science fiction follow with a lot of the same storylines: isolated population, competence porn, dark past gadgets. I think it says a little bit about, like, you know, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but maybe it says a little something about our current, you know, society, if someone being really good at something is like a big attraction for a book, you know. Of course, then again, James trip over his
that's kind of true in life, though, man. I mean, if you ever watch someone who's just really good at something, and it doesn't matter what it is. I sat there and watched a dude who was doing drywall once, right? You know, the guys who like freaking mud drywall, and he was really good at it. And I just sat there and watched him for like 20 minutes, A, because I was paying him to do it, B, because I was glad I didn't have to do it, and C, because it was just so cool watching somebody who really knows what the hell they're doing. And it doesn't matter what that thing is.
Yeah, I mean, like, man, if I see like somebody on YouTube that like knows how to carve a spoon, he doesn't have to say anything. He's got me for like 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm gonna watch him finish the spoon.
Speaking of which, and thank you for that unintentional segue. Does anyone in our audience know what today is historically in relation to computers and the internet?
I do.
I know you do. I told you.
Yeah, that's all. That's the only reason why.
Today, 19 years ago today, was the first video uploaded on YouTube.
Oh, I've been to where that was.
Here we are.
It was the San Diego Zoo, wasn't it?
Yeah, zoo.
Yeah.
And here we are today, you know, two jackasses with a YouTube channel carrying on that fine tradition of filming animals. So excellent. Good stuff. So back to what I was asking earlier, and you said you did, and I'm really curious to hear the story. I would love to hear a story when you're fighting, your mind is somewhere it doesn't need to be, and you are thinking about something else. Like,
all right, so
yeah.
In my last professional fight, I won. I finished it in the second round, and I got the guy trapped in a bad position. He was underneath me with one of his legs across my midsection and the other pinned underneath my legs in a way that he couldn't turn his body, right, to face up to me very well. And I was throwing elbows, and I would elbow him in the ribs, he would bring his hand down to protect his ribs, and I'd elbow him in his face. And this was all kosher for the for the venue. And I got what's called cross hand control, meaning I grabbed one of his hands, his opposite hand, the hand on the same side that he would be protecting himself, and I pulled it down and I pinned it so he had nothing to protect his head. And I just start, dropping in these elbows. And in that situation, the referee is supposed to step in and stop it if he thinks the fighter's in danger. Or that fighter can tap out. He can smack his hand on the mat and tell the ref, I've had enough. This guy didn't do that. He said in a small voice, please stop. He said, please stop. And I did not stop, but for a second, I was like standing behind myself, watching myself elbow this guy, going, is this really what I want to do, like long term? Seems interesting. And then I was back in my body, hitting the guy, but looking at the ref. Like, did you catch that? And then the ref called the fight, and and the guy was fine, and I was victorious, and we went about our. But it was one of those moments where it's just kind of like, man, I really would have liked a better response than please stop. Makes me feel like a bad person.
Was the guy Canadian? Getting the shit beat out of him and saying please?
He was Minnesotan, which is like in politeness, it's Canadian adjacent.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. All right.
So
I thought you were going to say something about the ref. I was going to say, I don't think there has ever been a referee in any sport in any time in history who has been accused of competence porn. So there's that.
That is true. This ref wasn't that bad. I coached fighters. I coached MMA fighters for a while. And we actually had a referee that was so bad in Nebraska that I told the promoter, who I had a great relationship with, he liked my guys because we showed up to fight. We worked hard. I told him, hey, if the fight is in Nebraska with, that athletic commission. Now, bear in mind, if anybody's from Alaska, don't get bent out of shape. This was over 10 years ago, and I'm sure they're great now, maybe. But this guy, the fighter that my guy was fighting was knocked unconscious. And then my guy didn't know the guy was unconscious and proceeds to slam about 9 or 10 power shots into this dude's head. I was shouting from the corner for my fighter to stop because I could see he was out. The ringside doctor was shaking the cage, telling he's out, he's out, he's out. And then the referee, his brain came back from the punch bowl and was like, oh, yeah, I guess he's out, and called it. And, you know, the other fighter, it took him a long time to get up. And they rolled him out on a stretcher. He ended up being okay. But, you know, they rolled him out on a gurney to get him checked out by the EMTs. And the real reason that I wouldn't let my guys fight in Nebraska after that is because I emailed the video of this, you know, bad refereeing to the athletic commission. I said, look, this guy takes 9 power shots. You can count them, 9 power shots to his brain that he did not need to take because of your referee. And their response was to say, well, we think he misrepresented his record. We think he wasn't as experienced of a fighter as he claimed. Which is flaming horseshit. Yeah, right? It's flaming bullshit, because your job as the ref is to protect the fighter. When a fighter is unconscious, it doesn't matter if he was the second coming of Chuck Norris, right?
Right.
That's your time to work. You know, so that was fighting in Nebraska.
Well, EL very cleverly has my follow-up question there. And have you ever applied those experiences to writing violence? Because in a Western, I'm sure you have some fist fights every now and then.
There's a lot of fist fights in Hail of Brimstone. And there's fights. There's fights in all the books. There's interpersonal violence that isn't. It's not just guys pulling a 6-gun and shooting each other. It's sloppier than that. You know, and there's sometimes 2 guys want to go at it, but they don't want to die, right? So they throw punches instead of shooting each other. And yeah, I definitely put some of those in the books. I can tell you there's fights I've had in some of the books. Not necessarily ones I won, but there's fights in the book.
Your hero, I'm sure, doesn't win them all, right?
Well, no, I mean, you can't have the guy win everything, right? I don't know what the male equivalent of a Mary Sue is, but like, if your guy is invulnerable, he gets boring, right? Superman without kryptonite is boring.
Superman with kryptonite is boring.
Well, I didn't want to be the first to say it, but That's
fine.
Correct.
I got you.
Yeah, the only thing that happens in Superman that interests me is when like Batman figures out some way to gas him with kryptonite and beat the crap out of him, because otherwise it's always a foregone conclusion. But my experience with the fighting thing, I also taught military combatives as a civilian contractor for about 3 years. I taught at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And I got to do a lot of work with those guys. I was real big into military combatives training, firearms training, all that stuff for a long time. And I still keep a little bit of a hand in it. And that definitely comes into my books as well. I want the action in my books to meet, basically for me, 3 criteria. I want it to be exciting, right? In a way that's relevant to the story. I want it to be visual. I want people to be able to see it. Like, I want to write descriptively enough that they can see that fight scene. Because when I was a kid watching a Kung Fu movie, watching Jackie Chan, how it looked so cool. So I try to write descriptively enough that people can accurately picture what's happening in the fights, in any of the action sequence, whether it's a chase, whether it's a moment of peril, whether it's a monster in the dark. Just I want people to be able to see it, to feel it. And then the other thing is I want it to be accurate. I've got a lot of guys who are fans of my work who I don't want to disappoint, because they're like Navy SEALs and Green Berets, cage fighters. They're guys that they know this stuff, and they'll tease me about it. They'll give me crap about it if I write a fight scene that's just not not realistic enough for their taste.
So where does I'm assuming you read Westerns as a kid. Where does the weird into your Westerns come in? How did that make its appearance?
that started with a bad book. I grew up reading Louis L'Amour. My older sister had a shelf full of them, and I would sneak into her room and, you know, snag them and read them. And I may still have several of them that aren't mine, but that are hers. So I was big in Louis L'Amour. And there's kind of some cool minor parallels between Louis L'Amour's life and mine. I'm no Louis L'Amour, but there's things that make me feel kind of a kinship with him. The weird has made its appearance. I was warned about you, man. I'm working on it. Now I lost my train of thought.
Louis L'Amour.
The weird
into the room.
Yeah. The weird came in. Was a comment I could have made there, but I don't want to freak out the internet. No, the weird came in because I found a book one. The back of the book basically promised monsters versus cowboys. And I was like, that is awesome. That's what I want. I want monsters versus cowboys.
Yep.
And I grabbed the book and I read it.
You're cutting out on us a bit.
So I'm trying to see what I can do about that. Did that change anything? Is it better?
That's better.
Yeah, it's
okay,
better
cool.
now.
I did nothing.
Anyway.
Well, it's like, you know, I grew up watching TV with rabbit ears, you know, so sometimes just how you hold your body.
That's right. Go
affects
bang
the
on the
signal
side
in
of
the
it a little bit.
So what happened is I found a book that, like, Stephen King had recommended it probably during his cocaine phase. And it was, you know, he said it was great. And it was supposed to be cowboys versus monsters. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want. Cowboys versus monsters. Sounds awesome. I read the book and it was utterly terrible. It was very, very disappointing. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to write the book I wanted to read.
There you go.
And so that's what I did. I wrote Shadow of Wolves, the first Kit Barker novel. And I sat on it for years. I mean, I sat on this thing for like 15 years. And then the pandemic came, you know, and everybody was, you know, losing their minds. And I was like, well, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to put this thing out on Amazon, try to do the work myself, get my name out there, see if I can call in some chips from my, you know, my days as a fighter and see what happens. Oh, Montague's been banned. Email Montague, email me and I'll get you, we'll get our trade going on the audiobooks. But so that, you know, and it went from there, and I just really liked the genre. I liked taking the classic Westerns that I loved and then putting something, you know, something unusual or supernatural or monstrous into them, because I loved Louis L'Amour growing up, but I also loved Stephen King's early stuff, Clive Cussler's adventure stuff. Jeffrey Deaver, like his mystery novels. I'm a big fan of Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, their Pendergast series, because sometimes it's not a monster and you think it's a monster and it turns out it's a dude, but pretty often the monster's real. And so that's cool. I like I like that sort of, you know, suspense of that.
And sometimes it takes 3 meddling kids and a dog to take off the mask and figure out that it was just the carnival ride guy.
4 dang kids. I'd have gotten away with it too.
That's right. Meddling kids.
John H. Stevenson IV says it looks like JR took the curio cabinets his grandma used to show off her Bell collection and turned them into bookshelves. Dude, do you want a set of audiobooks? Because I'll give you a set of audiobooks. I didn't get them from my grandma, but I got the barrister cases from family, and John Stevenson, John H. Stevenson, send me an email, man. Email me at author J.R. White. Email me, and and I'll send you Audible codes for a full set of my audiobooks. I hope you like them.
So what monsters have you had in your books?
Well, I don't know that I want to give all that away. The first monster is a werewolf. I mean, the werewolf's on the cover of the book. Right, so there's not much point in me being like, ooh, what is it? It's on the cover of the book, which I have actually taken some flack for from folks. They're like, we know what the book's about. It's like, okay, well, so like I wanted you to be able to look at that cover and know right away if it was for you or not.
You know what though? I mean, somebody out west keeps turning out Christmas movies where on the cover the girl's wearing red and the guy's wearing green, and she has a big job in the city and she's going to go home to her small town and fall in love with the Christmas tree salesman, right? You know what that movie's about before you ever take it out of the box. So that's okay. Okay, so you don't want to give away any of that. I get that. What monsters have you toyed with, possibly one day, perhaps thinking about putting in a book?
Well, I've got the werewolf. I've got a cool creature in the upcoming Kit Barker novel, the third one. Let me know when we're. Oh, I got a timer. Okay, cool. Because I want to make sure I announce the title of that. This will be the first place that I publicly announce the title of the third book. That one's got a real cool monster in it. I love it. The monster or the sort of the threat in the second book. Some people would describe that as having like some demonic overtones. I've definitely toyed with zombies. I've toyed with mythological creatures. Right. I was reading.
Don't do it.
Bo Kelly, do you want a book?
Oh, so
email me, Bo Kelly. Email me for your comment. JR, just say you're putting Jar Jar so we can watch Fruit lose it.
Oh God! Whatever you do
are you a Jar Jar fan or?
Do not bring up Captain Janeway. Do not say those words, JR. Just do not.
That sounds like some tall weeds we could get into there.
Yeah, we don't want to go down that road.
Bo Kelly, email me. I'll send you something. It'll be on Audible. It'll be audiobook on Audible.
You do your own audiobooks, or do you have someone do them?
No, I hired a professional voice actor named Micah Mason. He is phenomenal. He does a great job. He meters his voice to the action, so it really gets you into the book. And what's interesting is when I initially put up the audition, because I do my audiobooks through the Audible Creators Exchange on Audible. When I put up the audition, I had already listened to like some of his samples, and he wasn't my first choice. I had actually been courting this other narrator, and then Micah did the audition, and he blew me out of the water. I got chills. I was like, I called my wife, come in the room. You got to hear this guy's take on the material. And, that barring some, like meteor striking the earth, Micah's my guy for audio work. He does a fantastic job.
So I want to take a minute here because I got a couple stories I got to share. One, people who've watched the show know that I've told people like, hey, I talked to an MMA fighter. I'm good friends with that. So now they know that's a lie. And I also tell them that the whole reason I did audiobooks is because this guy told me about how he did it first. And this is also you. But I had a similar thing. I was listening to people. I was like, oh my God, that is Grammy. When I heard the guys, I was like, God, I hope I can afford him because that's who I want. Yeah. And then finally, I will tell you, I was driving to Chattanooga for Connuga. I told both of you this book before, but not everyone else. And I'm listening to your book, Shadow of Wolves, and I'm just driving along, and I get to southwestern Virginia where Roe lives, and also like, what's that light coming on? Because I'm engrossed in this book, and it's my gas light, and I'm like, great, I'm in Southern Virginia. So
we have gas stations,
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Yeah.
So I fill up, and I go, and I'm going on. I get past Knoxville, and all of a sudden the light comes on again. I'm like, damn it, JR, that's twice. I almost ran out of gas on the side of the road listening to your book. So
You're
love
welcome.
your book. You and
God.
EL have a lot in common, because both your books are easy 5-star for me.
Oh, nice.
So,
yeah, it sounds like
anyway,
EL's going to trade
I'm
me
done
one
now.
of his, so I'm excited about that now. Yeah, it is wild when you hear your character's voice, coming over that audio, and it's them, and that's really cool. I actually catch myself sometimes now when I'm writing, because I have to make sure that I'm still writing primarily for the print reader. But every now and then you find yourself thinking, man, this line would sound so badass when Micah said it. So I have to catch myself to make sure I'm not writing specifically for audio. I have to make sure that I'm doing it for my readers primarily. But I do love the audio format. I think it's really cool.
But I think most readers will put a voice in there anyway, right? When Harry Potter first came out, and I'm not going to go down the Harry Potter route, but when that came out, before any movies came out, I read Snape with Alan Rickman's voice, because it was just, to me, that's who Snape was Alan Rickman. So that was the one good thing they did with the movies, is they hired him. Who's the guy? I'm a Stranger Here Myself, Walk in the Woods. What the hell's his name? Anyway, very famous author, wrote those books. He narrates his own books, and it's very easy to read them in his voice, because he just has one of those voices, right? It's like anybody could read anything in James Earl Jones's voice, or there's some voices like that are just, so if you find this guy who perfectly encapsulates what you want from your character, you got to sign a long-term contract with that guy right away.
Yeah, he's very good. I like the audio a lot. I'd love to get into like film. I actually have a couple guys who are like, just independent filmmakers, and they're kind of hunting around a little to see if possibly we could get the novelette, The Bounty and the Bones, made into a short film. But I think that'd be a lot of fun. So if that comes to fruition, I'll make sure you guys are among the first to know.
Have you considered just getting like an indie filmmaker to do it? I worked with a guy at Virginia Tech who he and some other guys put together. It was a horror movie that they did it on. It took them like probably a couple of years to get it done. Getting these locations like fire departments and stuff like that for 30 minutes here and there whenever they could.
Well, the guys I've been talking with, the guys I've been talking with are indie filmmakers. They've actually, nothing is official with them. It's just like feelers out. So I don't want to, say too much, but like they've got a feature film that's coming out. One of their short films just got picked up to be expanded into a feature film. So like that kind of thing is cool. Any storytelling, that's up my alley, whether it's print or film or audio, anything short of interpretive dance, I'm there.
So Bo has a question for you, JR, because I didn't know enough to ask this question. What organization did you fight for in your MMA days?
I fought for a very small show in Minnesota called Brutal MMA. Some of my teammates got onto the bigger shows, I had guys that trained with me as teammates who were in the UFC, Strike Force. One of my teammates, Kelly Cobald, fought Gina Carano live on CBS for Elite XC. And I think that night was the first public broadcast TV of MMA in history. So like I've had a lot of like brushes with cool people. If he's an MMA fan, he'll probably know who Fedor Emelianenko is, the last emperor. One of my teammates when I was fighting was Brett Rogers, who was one of the first guys to take Fedor Emelianenko into the second round. And then Fedor figured him out and hit him so hard that he went down like he'd been shot in the spine. But, that happens. But as for myself, I fought I fought for a small organization called Brutal MMA. The promoter there was a guy named Nick Gamst. He is unfortunately no longer with us, but the character of Hiram Gamst in Hail of Brimstone, my second novel, the surname is taken from Nick Gamst. That was kind of one of the ways I thought would be neat to honor him, because he gave me my start in MMA. He was the first guy that said, "I'll give you money to hit this person."
What was that like the first time you did it? We're getting away from writing again, but it's just kind of fascinating.
That's what we do.
I got better at the psychological aspects, the more I did it. My team that I was with was a very rough play team. I mean, we beat the ever living dog snot out of each other on a regular basis. Like my coach didn't bother to learn my name until I had stuck it out like 3 months. I was leaning against a wall. I had just taken an elbow straight to the center of my face from a wonderful gentleman named Nick the Vicious Little Bastard Tolsma. And I just had blood pouring out of my nose, big grin on my face. And my coach looked at me sitting there and he goes, "Did you break your nose?" And I go, "No, coach, Nick broke my nose." And he looked at me and looked at this blood-soaked grin on my face and goes, "What's your name?" And went from there. So we were very rough play. But even so, the first time you go to fight, John H. Stevenson, the taller the mohawk, the more the intimidation, unless it is pink or blue. I knew a guy with a mohawk that was dyed blue, orange, red, like flames. And he would intimidate the hell out of you. I have a whole story about the first time I met that guy. It was actually the very first time that I went to the fight team that I ended up fighting for. But anyway, to get back to your original question.
Screw the original question.
I'll get to it. I'm very good at circling back, in theory. But what ended up happening is my first fight, I was pretty calm. I felt pretty good. And there's always a guy in a headset. And he sticks his head around the corner into the locker room, which in this case was just a big curtained off area. We were at a horse racing track. They had emptied out the parking garage adjacent to the casino and set up a cage. It was a place called Canterbury Park. And, I'm sitting there. I'm good to go. I'm feeling loose. I've got this nice adrenaline high. I feel like a superhero. This guy sticks his head around the corner and goes, "Smith, you're on deck. White, you're after him." I'm like, all right, cool. I'm ready. I was born to do this. I've been going hard with all my teammates. It's going to be great. All right, that guy goes out, and I think I've got like 5-10 minutes while he fights. He goes out. I hear, "Oh!" and the crowd cheers. And then this dude sticks his head around the corner. "White, you're on deck." And I go, "Okay." And I start walking to the nearest trash can. And one of my buddies gets in front of me to grab my shoulders and tell me how strong I am. And I put my hand on his face, shoved him aside, and just emptied my guts into this trash can. And then I wiped my mouth and I went out and I fought a guy, And once they start playing your music, right? Like whatever music you've chosen, I don't know, something real tough like Barbie Girl. You'll you just go out to the cage, and I actually described this phenomenon in Hail of Brimstone. There's a scene where I describe this phenomenon. The world shrinks. When you have a fight scheduled, the world shrinks. So there's like 6 billion people in the world. And then coach walks in and says, hey, you have a fight. There is a guy who is waking up tomorrow morning with kicking your ass on his mind, right? He knows your name. He's seen your face, and he wants to kick your ass for money. And now it's real. It's like, okay, I got the fight. The closer you get to the fight, the more you start cutting out extraneous people. Pretty soon it's just your immediate family and the team. And then like the week before your fight, it's like coach and your spouse, coach, and the 2 or 3 guys that you've been working with hard to like get ready. When you walk up to the side of the cage, they let you in, and it's you, the referee, and that other dude. And that referee, he looks at you and he goes, are you ready? And he looks at the other guy and he goes, are you ready? And the answer is irrelevant. And then he goes, go, and he fucking disappears. And the only people that exist in the entire world are you and this other dude. And the only 2 people in the entire world that understand each other are you and this other dude. And whatever happens, happens. And the next morning you wake up and there's 8 billion people in the world again. And it's jarring. It can be, it can be something else. Yes, Wizardly Reads are talking about cage fighting, but it's writing adjacent.
Do you hear the crowd much when that happens, or is that all just kind of just become background?
It's sort of background noise. My last pro fight, I have video of it. And after my fight, my coach, I was fighting, and I clearly heard my coach say, Justin, cross hand control. And I was like, okay. And I got cross hand control, and I did my thing, and I won. After the fight, I tell him like, oh man, everything went great when you reminded me to get cross hand control. And he said, no, everything went great when you frickin' listened. And I go, what do you mean? You told me and I did it. And he shows me the video. We had a habit when we fought of dragging our opponent right into our corner and trying to pin them into the cage with our coach right there, right? So they couldn't hear their own coach over the screaming of our coach. They felt like they were on enemy ground. It was just a good way to demoralize them. And sure enough, on the video, my coach is red-faced 8 inches from me through the cage, screaming, cross hand control, Justin, cross hand control, pin his hand, cross hand. He's losing it. He may as well have been on the moon, Yeah. So sometimes you hear things crystal clear. I've had guys that I've coached tell me, oh, I heard your voice the whole time. And then I've had, where, yeah, I may as well have been yelling at him in Greek. So it varies.
So do you have an editor that yells at you then?
I have.
Trying to bring it back to writing.
I have some good friends of mine that I send out. I don't call them like pre-reader copies, although I do have good friends I send out pre-reader copies to, like advanced copies. But I have guys that'll read it for me that proofread, and they'll tell me like, hey, this is a plot hole. Hey, this bothered me. Hey, this seemed out of character. And they don't pull punches, man. They're about as rough with me as my old coaches were. In fact, for the first book, for Shadow of Wolves, my first MMA coach was one of the proofreaders. And one of my favorite things he wrote, I have it, I still have it in the margins of Shadow of Wolves. It's just a red line, and next to it in red ink, Justin, if you tortured this sentence any further, they would bring you before the Hague.
Nice.
Yeah, that's.
So those of you that have joined us now know that what the J stands for, but.
So we're about 40, almost 50 minutes in. Do you want to tell us the title of your next book?
Yes. So
do we need a drum roll sound effect or something?
Well,
there you go.
First, I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the first two books. Just so I kind of ended up with a naming scheme, sort of on accident. So the first one is Shadow of Wolves, right?
Oh,
and that's where you
frozen.
first. Oh no!
No,
I broke
he's
the
fine
internet.
here. Fine on my end.
Oh, it's just my shitty hotel internet. Okay.
But yeah, so Shadow of Wolves was the first one. And that's where you meet Kit Barker and his, some of his compatriots and learn a little about his background. The second one is Hail of Brimstone. And that's, Barker's further adventures. And it's, Shadow of Wolves is a standalone story, but the Hail of Brimstone begins to build it into the series. And so the, kind of the one-off was the novelette, The Bounty and the Bones, right? And The Bounty and the Bones, that's just short and sweet, 14,000 words. The audiobook is like a little over an hour. That one is Barker adjacent. It's in the same universe as Kit Barker, but he's not the main character in it. He doesn't appear. It's a scary story that I had in my head that I needed to get out, for mental health reasons. So the title of the third Kit Barker novel, which is currently in its proofreading, so it has yet to do final revisions, but it is Fortress of the Damned.
Okay, Fortress of the Damned.
Yeah, so Hail of Shadow of Wolves, Hail of Brimstone, and hopefully releasing by Halloween, Fortress of the Damned. And that one's going to be a hard-hitting siege tale. It's going to be maybe a little bit darker than the first three novels, or the first two novels rather. And I'm Fortress of the Damned, The White House.
No.
Do you want a book?
Cleveland
Herman
Brown
P. Hunter, would you like a book? Email me, Mr. Hunter. I'll send you some books. I'll send you some ebooks or audiobooks. But yeah, the Fortress of the Damned is the one that's going to be coming out yet. I don't have a cover reveal yet. I need to reach out to Cammie Sanders and make sure she's still in the cover business.
So do you go to like Comic-Cons or events, or do you do like advertising on Amazon, or how do you
I advertise on Amazon and on Facebook. I use Written Word Media, who they're like an email ad service. They've recently started doing some social media ad packages, things like that. I maintain an email list, although I'm not super good at it. I need to be better about putting out emails to keep that list active. And I would like to get out to conferences more. I mean, that's how me and Mike met.
Yep.
And you still want to do it more now? I don't know. That sounds kind of sus.
Well, he moved to Florida to get away from me. So
okay, all right.
He's frozen right now, but that's okay.
He is. Well, we'll answer for him. He
There
says he's sorry. He didn't mean to. But you were relentless. You wouldn't leave him alone. So he's here out of pity.
He used to live in Maryland. So, anything's better.
All right, JR, if you can still hear us. You've been like this now for quite some time, and I'm sure it's not my Wi-Fi anymore. So that's an interesting way to get off the show, though, right?
It is.
You're kind of like, I have had it with these two buffoons. I'm ready to go. He's probably hearing all of this. He's just really good at being still.
I was going to say the great thing is he's just holding still. That wasn't frozen.
That's right. That's the other thing he used to do when he wasn't doing MMA. He was that guy dressed up in gold suit out on the plaza, So we'll just wait for him to hopefully come back.
Hey, at least we got the name of the book.
That's right. We did get that out there. And don't forget, during this little interlude, like and subscribe. Do that.
Hey, somebody remembered, because I never do.
It's the second time, man. Come on. So, Mike, what you got going on? You got your book ready. Mike sent me words. That's kind of exciting. You're getting it edited now and getting ready to get that thing done.
So, hold on.
Here it comes.
JR is thinking about it.
I'm going to hit remove on him just to see what he does. Oh, come on. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Come on. Maybe just a little while longer.
Hey, there
Are we
you are.
back?
You're
We
back.
are.
Was everybody gone or was it just me?
It was just you.
That's okay. We spoke for you. Don't worry.
That's right. You're giving everybody $30 now.
Very eloquent things.
Yeah, don't watch the replay. But yeah, we spoke for you.
I'm not sure where you left off, actually.
So
like
Fortress of the
this.
Damned. I was
Okay.
touching my chin a lot. I'm surprised that Mr. Stevenson didn't comment on it. He says that he likes the way I drink. I'd offer him an audiobook, but I think I already have.
Yeah, you did.
You already have.
Yeah. So the Fortress of the Damned is the third Kit Barker novel. And it's going to be like a siege tale. It's going to be a little bit darker than its predecessors. And I can tell you that some people we care about might die. We'll see.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You have the same rolling characters from book to book?
To an extent. For the second book, as far as characters that carried over, it was just a couple. Kit Barker and another character carry over, and we get some new characters in the third book, Fortress of the Damned, which I'm hoping to have out by Halloween. That one, obviously Barker's back because it's a Kit Barker novel, and we'll see some returning characters from both of the previous books. You'll see some characters come back from Hail of Brimstone, and a couple characters come back from Shadow of Wolves, and go from there. And I am going to have it kind of set up a 4-book arc. So after Fortress of the Damned, there will be another book to close out the current arc. And after I close out that arc, there will be more Kit Barker. It's just a matter of, where he goes from there. And I do move the books forward through history. So, the world of the West is changing the whole time.
Nice.
Have you gotten to a point yet with your writing where you've kind of sat there and said, I want to do something different than Kit Barker?
Well, I have a real barn burner sci-fi novel in me. While I'm waiting for Fortress of the Damned to come back from the proofreaders, the editors, I might do some work on this sci-fi story. I've actually got probably 3 or 4 good sci-fi novels in me. I've got one straight Western in me, not a weird Western, but a straight Western that I've had kind of on the back burner for a long time. I plan to do an anthology of Weird West stories. There's a friend of mine who is looking at doing those with me, where we'll each write stories. And I don't know if it's just going to be the 2 of us or if we're going to try to bring in some additional authors. But we're going to try to do an anthology that all the stories have a central hub, a central location from which all the individual stories of the anthology branch out. So yeah, I definitely have more than just Weird Westerns in me, but I love Barker, and I see writing Barker novels for a long time. I'm just going to start fleshing out with these other stories as well.
Awesome. That's cool to have your own kind of Sherlock Holmes, a character that you've kind of fallen in love with so much that you want to just keep writing him into places.
Yeah,
and JR?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. You're the guest. Go ahead. They've heard me talk.
I was just going to say that, I do sometimes find myself thinking like, what would Barker do? In Hail of Brimstone, I had this scene I wrote where in my head, Barker's going to say this, he's going to do that. This is what's going to happen in this situation. And something else came out of his mouth. And I was like, well, crap.
Yeah.
because that's the character. That's what he would do. And it turned out for the best. It was an awesome scene. I love how it turned out. It led to my mother's favorite scene in all the books. There's a funny story about that. She loves the audiobooks, right? My mother, she loves the audio performances, and I get those performances before they're released. And so a couple Christmases ago, we were all sitting in the sunroom at my folks' place in Virginia, up on top of this mountain, beautiful view. Everybody's having a conversation, and I'm like, "Hey, Mom, the bridge scene is done on audio. Do you want to hear it?" She goes, "Yeah." So she puts in the earbuds and she's listening to it, and the rest of us are having like a normal, normal conversation, and it starts to turn to who in the family isn't feeling well, sicknesses in the family, older relatives, and someone said something like, Aunt Beatrice has stage 4 cancer. And Mom goes, "That is fantastic." Right? And everybody, except for me, is like, "What the hell, Mom?" Because she had just finished listening to this scene, and like, you could not make this up. It just lined up so perfectly.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
They're the best. You're very lucky in that your character did something cool like that, because Mike and I have had, and I'm sure most other people have had that as well. But in our cases, the character dies. He does something stupid.
Yours, not me.
That you didn't expect the little bastard to do, and he's laying on the floor in a pool of his own mucus, and you're like, shit.
I've had that experience too, because the thing that I wanted Barker to say that he just couldn't say, the thing he said, I was like, "Well, you're dead, buddy." Like, how am I going to write your ass out of this? I figured it out, but like, it's so weird because, and you guys being writers know this.
Yep.
You think you're in charge of these characters. Like, people would think you guys are in charge of the characters. But once you've created the character, there's stuff that is and is not in that character.
Yep.
And you'll just be like, "Well, I've written myself into a corner because this is what would have happened." And it makes it fun.
Let's see how, it's kind of neat as a writer, just thinking the same way a reader would, is like, how is he going to get out of this? It's much worse as a writer, knowing that you have to keep pressing keys until he gets out of it. But, we get it.
Mr. Montague says, "That's why I'm a pantser." Now, for those of you listening that don't know what that means, there are, in the writing world, there's basically plotters and pantsers, right? Plotters, they get out a sheet of paper, they map out everything, they know what's going to happen in each, and then he does this. Right, and just hopes for the best. And I'm kind of in between. Because there's some things I know need to happen in the book, and to make the story work. And so I will sometimes plot things out like like on a sheet of paper. This happens here, but it'll literally be like that old Far Side comic. Do you remember the one where it's a guy writing an equation on the wall? And it's like, equation, a miracle happens. Equation. And that's kind of what I do. I'm like, I have to get from here to there.
Right.
I know here, I know there, but I'm going to pull myself by the seat of the pants through whatever's in between.
Yeah.
And sometimes that will change what there is. You'd be like, "No, I like this better." So, yeah.
There was a writer who once said, in regards to that, when you're driving at night, you can only see 20 feet ahead of you, but you can go the entire distance that way.
Yeah.
And I always liken it to a map, right? If I'm where I am and I want to be on the other side of the country, and I have a map, okay, I need to head west. There's a million ways I can get to where I want to go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter which one I take. I just need to keep heading in that direction.
Yeah, and you'll get there. You'll find a way, because you know where you're going. How you get there, that's the fun part. I don't always, but
I like to think that even Tolkien was in the mines of Moira for one day, wondering, what the hell am I doing in these mines? And then, Gandalf does his thing, and he's probably sitting there going, shit, that was not meant to happen. Now, we all know that it probably was, but I like to think that it wasn't.
Yeah, that would be great to imagine J.R.R. Tolkien going, and then he knocks a pebble down the well. I wonder what woke up. Huh. And then you've got the Balrog and all that. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
I hope your grandmother washed off the golden book she used to measure her door trim.
Golden book.
I don't know if that's meant to be mean or not, but that actually gives me a little bit of nostalgia, right? Because my folks would, you'd put something on your kid's head, and measure how tall they were getting, right? I'm like 5'9" on a good day, right? But I'm a good 6'1" with the mohawk, so that's why she had to wash off the books. It gets hair gel on it. I'd give you another book, man, for that comment, but I'm already giving you everything, so.
So I was just going to tell you, my first book, I sent it to a developmental editor, and she gave it back. She goes, this is really good, but the ending it's kind of lacks a little. Maybe make something. I'll have him pray to a god or something. Before, and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot have a bad ending. And I sat there, I was like, I don't know. The guy's on top of a rocky outcrop. He has no weapons. The guy below him has mind control and is in his mind. Don't know how this ends. And I literally just like, well, I don't know. Let's just start typing. And I was like, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, wait. And I was so happy. And I called my brother, like, I've solved it. He's like, that's great.
You going to tell us?
Do what?
You going to tell us?
No, you got to read the book.
I've read it. I just forgot.
Yeah, well, see, now you got to read it again.
All right.
Tell you what, I'll send you an audiobook code.
So, my
they're after
be
your
careful how I say this, right? Yeah, they are after my Scott. This is actually the very last of that bottle. It was given to me for Christmas, and I want you to know that it was mostly empty when I started. I'm naturally this charming. I didn't have to over lubricate, but so Mike, Shadow of Wolves. Shadow of Wolves has that particular ending. That was not the original ending. You know how like the big climactic thing happens, and then there's like a little bit of a resolution, just like 3 sentences.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 sentences were not originally there. It was just big climatic thing, and then off into the wind. People got mad. They were like, no. You can't leave us on that cliffhanger. Yeah. So it's so I just took the 3 sentences to tweak it a little, and I think it turned out pretty well. And if you guys watching want to find that out, look up Shadow of Wolves, Kit Barker on Amazon.
Hey, I remember what we were talking about 20 minutes ago. I was going to ask you.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot. There's a story I said I would tell that I forgot to tell, but go ahead.
Okay, real quick then. You said you advertise on Facebook and Amazon and all that. Which works best for you?
So I think I did okay. Like I, maybe did a little bit better than my costs on Amazon lock screen ads. But I had to redesign my cover slightly because on the Shadow of Wolves print cover, the cowboy on the cover is pointing a gun at a werewolf. Because if you had a gun and you had a werewolf, you'd point a gun at the werewolf. And Amazon did not like that. They did not care for that at all. So for the lock screen ads, I went back to Cammie Sanders and I had her do a version where Kit Barker's holding a lantern instead of pointing a gun at the werewolf, so that I could run Kindle lock screen ads. and they did all right. I found Facebook to be hit or miss. I found the stuff from Written Word Media to be pretty good. They're the guys that do Booksy, Bargain Booksy, Free Booksy. You have to fiddle with your pricing for some of those.
Yeah.
But I thought those were pretty good. And the other thing, what was the other thing I'd done? Oh, I actually had Indie Reader do a review of Shadow of Wolves. Like I paid to have like an editorial review done. And I'm really thinking about going back and having that done for Hail of Brimstone and when Fortress of the Damned comes out for that one as well, because I do think I got a decent bump off of that review. I got a little bit of exposure off that. The only thing I would do different is on the paperback editions, I put the little Indie Reader approved on there.
Mm-hmm.
And for the print editions, I don't think I'd do that again. Some readers at least didn't seem to care for it. They want a clean cover. So, so that was kind of a learning curve thing for me. But
your story now.
Okay, so the guy with the mohawk, right? The guy with the mohawk that was done by Flames. So the first time that I went to this fight team to go train, I had read about them in a local news story. The guy from their team was actually like the villain of the story. Like he beat up the guy that was the subject of the story, who was this kid training to be a cage fighter. And I decided I'm going to go train with these guys. So I found their address. I showed up for practice, and it was a residential neighborhood. So I'm parked out front of the address, and I'm like, well, what's going on? I'll wait a little bit. Another vehicle pulls up, and this stocky kid, right, in a sweatsuit, he gets out, and he walks up the driveway with a gym bag, and he goes into the garage. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's where it is. Maybe it's a rough and tumble place. Maybe we're in the garage. So I go head on up there. I go inside. This kid's already sitting on the mat in his fight gear with a chunk of chewing tobacco in his lip, and he's spitting into an empty Gatorade bottle. Does not say a word to me. Right? But the 4-car garage is, covered in mats up the walls, holes the size of fists and heads in all the drywall. Right there, it's in Minnesota in the winter. There is an oil furnace shooting an intermittent 2-foot jet of flame into the room to keep us from freezing. And I'm like, all right, I guess this is it. And I change out into my gear, and I go over. I sit near this guy, and I start stretching. So he's stretching, I'm stretching. He's spitting in his tobacco bottle. Neither of us is saying anything. The door opens, and in walks this dude with a pork pie hat and a 3-piece suit, right? And he goes, "Oh, hey, Nick, what's up?" And Nick goes, "Oh, hey, Travis, what's up?" Right? And Travis, who I later found out was Travis the Hurricane Redinger, he starts taking off his suit. He takes off his hat, and he's got this big mohawk that is blue, orange, red, like flames. He takes off his shirt, pulls out one arm, and it's tattooed in spider webs from the knuckles to the elbow. Pulls out his other arm. It's tattooed in flames from the knuckles to the elbow. Pulls off the rest of his outfit. He has the word Bellator, right, which is like Greek or Latin for warrior, tattooed in like 3-inch high letters across his 6-pack abs, right? And he gets into his gear. He walks out. He comes. He sits right next to me. He doesn't say a word. And he puts his mouth guard in, turns to me, and smiles. And his mouth guard is all black, except for a tiny little white lettering that says "Eat shit." And I look at him, And I turned to Nick, who has just not said a word to me the whole time, right? He's just got his spit bottle. And I go, so, what have I gotten myself into? And he goes, an ass whooping. And that was my first experience with Team Bison, that's the team I fought for those 4 years. They were a bunch of savages. I wouldn't go so far to say that we were bad people, but we were really okay with hurting people. Here's a guy say, I've seen the Hurricane fight a few times. Well, yeah. He had a great fight against Travis Wolf that I actually filmed. So, yeah, fun days. I think of them as the woolly days. I've got some just great stories from my cage fighting days. Very happy to not be doing that for a living anymore. I could not have fed myself if that's all that I was doing at the time. I was actually working as a research scientist for the University of Minnesota at the same time, which is why I was Justin the Mad Scientist White when that was my fight name.
What was your area of study?
My degree is in marine biology, but when I worked as a researcher, and I worked both as a research scientist, a junior scientist for the University of Minnesota, and then I also worked for a few years as a lab tech for the University of Florida. And I worked on adult-derived stem cell research, gene therapy research. I was building viruses at one point. That's what I did at the University of Minnesota. And then at the University of Florida, I did basically like confirmation studies. So if somebody says, hey, we've got this new miracle drug, we've got this new miracle treatment for this condition, let us take it to market. The FDA basically goes, oh yeah, great, but let's have somebody who doesn't have jack squat to do with you rerun the experiment before we start putting this into people. And that's kind of what we did. We would run those studies, to kind of get independent confirmation of some of these things. And that was really cool. When I worked for the University of Minnesota, I basically worked on, in the 4 years I was there, I basically worked on 2 diseases. I worked on epidermolysis bullosa, which is the worst disease you've ever heard of or haven't heard of. It's skin falls off of children. Skin falls off of children. It's horrific. That was one. And we worked a little bit on a disease called severe combined immunodeficiency. That's an immunocompromising disease. It's similar to like HIV, AIDS, except you're born with it. You don't acquire it. It's genetic. But 2 diseases working for University of Minnesota. When I worked for
Go ahead.
When I worked for University of Florida, I actually got to work on like 10, 12 diseases, in the 3 years I worked for them, because we were cycling through these confirmation studies. And so that was really cool.
Why would the disease only take the skin off children? We are going way away from weird Westerns right now, but I need to know this.
Yeah, sometimes you throw something on the table and people just are like, well, I have to know about that. Basically, it affects a collagen, GNA, to produce collagen, specifically collagen 7, which is one of the connective tissues that helps hold your skin onto your body. And the reason it makes skin fall off of children exclusively is because no adults make it. You don't get to adulthood with this disease. You die of skin cancer in like your early teens. But while I was working at University of Minnesota, I was working for a man, Dr. Jakob Toller, goes by Jacob Toller. He's actually, I think, the dean of the medical school there now, which doesn't surprise me at all. He was a very competent, very driven man. And he was seeing these kids as patients. He wasn't just sitting at a bench in a lab fiddling around. He was watching these children die in front of him. So he was very motivated. And we actually figured out some treatments. We figured out a bone marrow based treatment where if the child had a normal sibling, you could do a bone marrow transplant from the normal sibling to the kid that was affected by the disease. And then we also came up with some gene therapy treatments where you could basically get correct DNA into the cells to repair the broken DNA. And the kid's system would slowly replicate and they would slowly heal. If you could just give them palliative care to keep them alive, this treatment would work. And I'm exceptionally proud of it. It's one of those things that I really consider myself blessed that I was even adjacent to that. So yeah, Dr. Jacob Toller at University of Minnesota. This was a man, I saw him once almost brought to tears because he got to watch one of these kids eat potato chips because they could eat the chips without the skin in their mouth or their throat coming off.
Oh, jeez.
And so like to see like something that you had any contribution to at all. And mine was not a great contribution. I was a low level flunky. I made sure that the mice didn't die. I grew cells.
But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, all that's important, right? I mean, that's like the logistics tale of the military. It's you can be the guy that's flying the plane all you want, but without the guys loading the munitions, you're a freaking target. You're nothing else. So it's all important. And that's very cool that you got to be involved in something that actually made a difference, literally in life and death kind of ways. That's awesome.
Yeah, that made me happy. The only things I can think of in my life that I'm more proud of than that as an accomplishment is I taught military combatives for a long time, and there's someone here in the comments is asking, why did you leave, and what are you doing for work now? And this is kind of adjacent to that. My wife is in the Army, or she was in the Army. She's medically retired. But when we were in Minnesota, it was so that she veterinary school. And the Army, both her parents are career military. The Army paid to do veterinary school, and she went into the military. We got stationed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and the military guys there found out, and that's why I left Minnesota, because we moved. The military moved us. The guys in Fort Leavenworth found out that I had been a cage fighter, and they said, "Hey, why don't we put you through some of these military combatives programs, get you certified? You can help us teach. You can run an MMA team here and make some money doing that. And why don't you give this a shot?" And I did, and I loved it. The quality of the people was fantastic, and so I actually ended up being one of the first civilians to ever go through the Special Operations Combatives program. Just, not because I was fancy. I was just in the right place at the right time. But I have had soldiers tell me, this thing you taught me saved my life, or this thing you taught me saved my buddy's life. And that's really humbling. And to an extent, it's really terrifying because I still teach people how to fight. That's the answer to what do I do now. I do writing, and I teach martial arts. I teach Muay Thai. I teach jiu-jitsu. I teach people how to fight. I teach people how to protect themselves, and I also teach it as a sport for people to compete. And when it comes to folks defending themselves, when I'm teaching a soldier, when I'm teaching a law enforcement or anything like that, there's definitely a weight there of like, man, if I screw this up, if I give this guy bad information and I get him killed, that's going to weigh on me. And I do actually have a friend of mine who was a Ukrainian Spetsnaz. He was Ukrainian Special Forces, believed in his country. And I know that there's a big mix of opinions, about that topic, but this was a man who believed fervently that his country could be something better, and he was killed. And that is one where sometimes I hope I gave that guy my best. I hope that whatever I gave that guy was the best that I had.
Well, all the hand in hand in the world isn't going to do anything against 5.56 round. So
he was killed in a rocket strike. So at least I know that it wasn't anything I could have taught him how to get out of. But it does make you think. I made a point out how he passed, in part because he was my friend, and in part for that reason. But like that kind of emotional stuff, I do think it helps me with writing because it gives me something I can put into the characters. Yeah.
A little kind of gravitas,
Yeah, exactly. Because as much as I love the old, like sort of like pulp, like pulp fiction novels and all the cool, like over the top adventure novels, like that are still kicking around from like the 40s through the 60s. One of my proudest moments was when a reviewer, actually the reviewer from Indie Reader, said that Shadow of Wolves could have been written by Robert E. Howard, who of course wrote the Conan the Barbarian stories.
Nice.
So that's really cool to me. But I also do want to have that grounded reality for my characters. I want you to feel like my characters are in real danger or real emotional distress. I want you to be able to relate to them.
That's awesome. The good news is that Chris Navo just showed up. The bad news is we got to do the whole 90 minutes again because he just.
All right, so
yeah,
from the top, I'm going to need another bottle of scotch. Give me.
All right, so other than your website, which has been scrolling up there for the last 90 minutes, is there anywhere? Are you on X or anything like that?
I'm on Facebook. Author J.R. White on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram as Storyteller at Large, so you can find me there. I'll probably be on X shortly. It's just I'm not as heavy on the social media as I probably should be, to keep my name out there. Yes, Christopher Navo Scotch. I had a very nice Compass Box Spice Tree. I want the record to show that this was already mostly empty when I started.
He's been drinking from a straw.
I had one of those hats, 2 bottles.
Right.
It was great. You missed it.
Curly straws going up. You should have seen it, but you didn't because you're late. All right. Mike, do you have anything else?
No, I can't top that.
No, I've got nothing. So,
well, I would like to say just real quick, Christopher Navo, the fact that you tried to jump on, even though you probably knew this was ending, send me an email and I'll send you some Audible codes for my audiobooks. Cause I like that you came out, even though you probably knew it was close to the end. I appreciate it, man.
And we appreciate his email like 5 sets of books you've given away. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Or it might get out. You never know. Mike, we're going to have to keep this up somehow.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'm really glad that you guys invited me on. And, to be honest, I've really had a blast. I love this. If you guys ever want to do this again, send me reach out to me.
You said your next book's coming out later this summer, yeah?
Before Halloween. I'm going to try to get it around Halloween. I try to get it a little before Halloween so I can do the advertising push for Halloween just because it's, horror adjacent. That seemed to work pretty well for me. So that's kind of what I'm going with.
Yeah, get in touch with us and we'll get you out here before Halloween then. That'd be fun.
All right. I appreciate it. Love it.
Okay.
All right.
JR, stay on the line, but we're going to end the live stream part.
All right.
Thank
Stay
you
dangerous,
all for showing
everybody.
up and all